All right, welcome everybody. Thank you all for being here for the second Econ Game speaker series. I'm excited to introduce today's presenter, but before we do that, I just wanted to remind you that our next speaker is on November 17th, and that's Dr. Dustin Rumbaugh at Belmont University. And he will be talking about the impact of American football on men's labor hours. This is going to be more of an econ research paper. It's a published research paper that they recently published that he will be talking about how the paper came about and their findings. So make sure that's on your calendar. All our speaker series are at 12 p.m. If you haven't checked the speaker series on the website, Jenny, if you could put that link down there again, because we're continuously adding new speakers. So put those on your calendar. So with that said, thank you all for being here. My colleagues have asked you to use the chat to introduce yourself, where you're from. The goal of the Econ Games is to develop a network and a community of like-minded individuals that are so excited about economics and data and analytics. So start building those bonds with each other. Today, we have Kendall Ruber with Yum Brands. I'm really excited about this presentation. I've known Kendall for many years, and I've had the privilege to follow her experiences over the years. If you don't follow her on LinkedIn, I highly recommend that you do follow her on LinkedIn. She always provides value and access to additional resources for individuals that are interested in the data analysis world. So Kendall has a Bachelor of Science in Economics and a Bachelor of Arts in Spanish, and also has a Master's of Science in Business Analytics from the University of Louisville. That's where I did my undergraduate. So go Cards, a shout out for our Louisville faculty in the audience. I know there's at least one person out there. She currently works at Yum Brands as a data analyst and has held other data analytics positions in the field of human resources, cybersecurity, and business operations. She also teaches at the University of Louisville as a statistics instructor. So feel free to engage her with asking questions. She loves what she does. And as a faculty member, I could tell you that it is always more exciting to present when the audience is fully engaged in asking questions. Feel free to use the chat. Kendall will present, and then we'll have Q&A at the end, but use the chat in the meantime. Kendall, thank you so much for being here. We're really excited to have you and looking forward to your presentation. The floor is yours.
All right, so thank you for a little introduction. I'll go ahead and share my screen. Just let me know when you can see it.
I see perfectly.
And so, yeah, if there's anything that comes in on the chat that you want to stop me with, feel free to do that as well. But so today I want to talk about how you can use your economics degree in order to get you a career in data. And so first off, just Dr. A did a good job of introducing me, but just a little bit more about me. So I am from Northern Kentucky, which I feel like quite a few people on this call probably are as well. But I did not go to NKU for my studies. I did go to the University of Louisville, and I currently live here in Louisville still. Right now, I work for Yum Brands, which is the company that owns KFC and Taco Bell and Pizza Hut. So all your favorites. I've been with them since March, so I'm still a little relatively new there. But outside of work, I love cooking, and also I have a great houseplant collection that has helped a lot in my work from home environment. And so just going through kind of my career journey. So when I was an undergrad, I actually was an on-campus worker at U of L Subway. And so really where I got my analytics interest from was my first internship in HR. And so typically when people think of HR, they think a lot about job interviews and people going to career fairs. But what I did was completely different from that. And I loved it. And so in that role, I would study questions around why people might be leaving the company, minority and female hiring practices, and also some compensation analysis. And so from this, that's what showed me that I wanted a career in data science, but I had absolutely no programming experience. And so that's where I decided to go back to school and to learn the skills that I was missing. And so first, before I get too far into my career journey, I do want to take a step back. And I think that right now, a lot of people in this room are probably interested in internships. And so like that was kind of the first step in my career for me as far as entering the professional world. And so I want to go over with you all why you need them and how you can secure them with your skill set. And so I think that as econ majors, my experience is that typically we do have to get a little bit more creative with our internships than other majors, specifically in the College of Business. When I was going through and applying for my internships, a lot of them that I saw were accounting and finance, or they wanted somebody that was explicitly computer information systems. And so while at the same time, a lot of those said that econ could be a related field, it wasn't as explicitly mentioned as the other ones were a lot of times. And so I think that overall, I mean, internships are great. I'm sure that if a lot of you guys are in the undergrad space, then you're well aware of that. But I mean, really what we want them for is so we can make connections, put our classroom skills to use, obviously earn money, and explore career options. And then hopefully that might turn into a full-time job offer. All right, and so the first part is how we get them. And in these next few slides, I've kind of broken it down into 3 steps of how I think it would be good for somebody to go about getting an internship. And so first, you want to make sure that you stand out. That means that your resume and your online presence is going to be a recruiter's first glance at you. So you want to make sure that you catch their attention from the get-go. After you get their attention, you want to make sure that you showcase your skill set. So that's clearly conveying what skills that you bring to the table and being aware of how you can contribute to their business. And then lastly, I think it's really important that people are confident. I know that a lot of these things are easier said than done, but advice that I like to give a lot is that nobody's going to believe in you if you first can't believe in yourself. And so just a little bit of confidence will go a long way. But for the first slide, standing out. So they say that on average, a recruiter looks at a resume for about 6 seconds. And so you have to make those 6 seconds count. And when you go through and you first look at this resume, this is just something I stole from Google. Like this isn't mine or anybody that I know. But you do want your contact information to be easy to find. So you want to know who is applying and then how you contact them. After that, you'll want to go ahead and list your technical or maybe your field specific skills at the top. And your recruiter is really going to appreciate this because it can let them see right away what you bring to the table, what you're interested in, and kind of where your expertise lies. And then after that, so I'm getting a little bit lost in my notes. So after that, you'll probably list your education, especially if a lot of you all are current students. I did leave the bullet point not including high school because I feel like once you're in the college space, like your high school experience, yes, is important, but it can make you look a little bit younger and a little bit more immature. So I would go ahead and leave that off and just put your college experience. But so next after that is work experience. And so some people, especially at the undergrad level, might feel that they don't have any relevant experience yet. And I just want to say that that is probably not the case. I mean, I told you all earlier that before I had gotten my internship, I worked at my campus's Subway. So anything counts. But aside from that, a lot of people, even if they don't have relevant work experience, might have campus involvement. So that's things like, were you a leader in your fraternity sorority, or were you a part of other student organizations? Those are also experience that we will look for as well. And so lastly, depending on the amount of experience that you have, it might be a good idea to list relevant coursework. Kind of after you graduate, that might not be something that you want to include, but if you're looking for that internship, especially when people are assuming that a student is going to be the correct candidate, that might be something that can show like what you've completed and kind of also be another place where you can show what you're interested in. All right, and so with this one, I wanted to take a little bit of time to talk specifically about LinkedIn. And so LinkedIn, I didn't really have one until probably my sophomore or junior year of college, but I think it's definitely something that I underutilize and now realize how important it is. But I wanted to take time to talk about this because making connections, aka everybody's favorite buzzword, networking, is really important for getting you those jobs. And a lot of people do shy away from networking just because, I don't know, when I think of that, I picture myself at like events, talking to strangers that I don't really know, trying to make conversation and small talk, but it doesn't have to be that way. And especially now with COVID, I think that online networking is really more important than it maybe ever has been before. And I think it's really important that you all will take advantage of this. And so for me, one of the best ways that I've done some online networking is through LinkedIn. And so I think LinkedIn is great because really you can expand your network to people that you never would have had exposure to. So one of the people, for as an example, that I'm connected with is a data science manager over at Apple. And he pretty frequently comments on my stuff, likes my stuff. I do the same thing to him, but that's somebody that he lives out in California. And so without LinkedIn, would I ever have talked to him or met him before? No, probably not. And so it can really expand your network outside of the area that you live or outside of people that you had went to school with. But yeah, like aside from that, I think I wanted to include these screenshots in here because if a recruiter Googles you, which not all of them do, but some of them do like to do their social media research, the LinkedIn profile will be the first thing that shows up. And I Googled myself and showed that that is relevant. And that's the first impression that they're getting of me. And so when you do have your LinkedIn profile, you do want to make sure that it's up to date. And this is something that, yeah, increasingly in an online world, people are going to be expecting and looking at. And aside from just kind of being an easy access point for recruiters, it does give you more space than a typical one-page resume. So while I do recommend that your resume that you submit to them is limited to one page, kind of, I mean, a piece of paper doesn't have a scrolling capability like an online profile does. And lastly, aside from this, I kind of hinted to this earlier with the example of the manager from Apple, but LinkedIn really gives you access to people all over the world. And so you can take this as an opportunity to find people that are in the field that you're interested in or in certain jobs that you're interested in right now, where you see yourself in a few years, and go ahead, add those people, see what they post, and see if it still seems relevant to you, but also engaging with others is really a great way to get yourself out there and to get people to a point where you might get some name recognition. All right, and so the next part is showcasing your skill set. And so before I move on from the section, I really hear from students a lot that, what if I don't have anything to put on my resume yet? Or I don't have any relevant experience. I'm just a cashier at Target, or I just work at Starbucks. And so a lot of people, I think especially students, will get insecure that they feel like their resume or their LinkedIn might be a little bit of empty. And so I wanted to include this throwback picture of me to show that before I entered the professional world, I worked at Subway. And so, yeah, by no means was that a glamorous job, or was that something that was directly econ related, me using my classroom knowledge. But when I first interviewed for my HR job, I was able to talk about skills that I had acquired in this role. So things like time management, working with customers, working with other people, are all very valuable skills. And it's not something that you should devalue if that's the only experience that you have. And if you have good recruiters or good hiring managers, they should know that you're a student. So you're not expected to walk into the workforce with 5 years of experience, even though some job descriptions may seem like you should. But yeah, like another thing that I want to say about this Subway job is, even though, I mean, now this was probably about 4 or 5 years ago since I've worked there, but it's still something that I like to talk about in my interviews and just kind of in my career in general. And so now that I work at Yum, which is the parent company of some of the biggest fast food companies in the world, I can talk about like how I used to be a restaurant employee myself. Like I know what a POS system looks like, and I'm able to make those connections for my passion of why I want to be in this industry versus kind of where I came from in my career journey. So please like don't devalue that experience that you already have. And so give me a couple seconds to start this poll. I might have to unshare and then share again if that's okay with you all.
That's perfectly fine.
Okay, because thanks. Was not letting me highlight my link.
While you're doing that, I'll encourage everybody that has a LinkedIn account to post it in the chat so we could all connect with each other and build our network. So take the time to do that.
Okay, and so yeah, for this poll, if you all could text the number that was on the screen, I'll probably have to share it again unless you got it.
I think you'll have to share it again if you don't mind.
Okay, I can put it in the chat actually, that might be easier. And so I just put the information in the chat, and I'll give everybody just a couple minutes to join. You should get a message back that I think it'll just tell you that you have entered the poll, but that's really all you need to do on your end. It gives you a link, but you don't need to do anything with that. Yeah, okay, so with this poll, so our central question I want you all to answer here is, what have you learned about while getting your econ degree? And so this is, I know it's a very open-ended question. To be able to respond, you can just text things and send it, and it'll show up on the screen, but it can be a one-word answer. I would kind of prefer one-word answers just for the sake of this example, but it can be stuff that's more theoretical, maybe soft skills that you've gotten from your degree, things that you've learned in statistics courses, and really anything. And so as the responses start to come in, they'll show up here, and you can respond more than once too. So if you think of different skills you have, just kind of name them off and send them as you go.
So are we supposed to be seeing the screen, or?
Can you not see it?
No, just wanted to make sure.
Okay,
All right,
what about now?
Yeah, yes, perfect.
Okay, maybe it took a little bit to buffer. All right, so I'm seeing some public speaking. I like that one. Also data, love that one too. I love this little tool, how you can watch it as the responses come in. So I'm seeing elasticity, world. I assume maybe that's real world, but it might have got cut off somewhere. Another person has said speaking. Some analytics, data modeling is good.
So Kendall, I do this exercise with my students before the semester starts or the first day of class, and I ask them what they think economics is, and the number one answer is money, right? So I'm looking at this and I'm like, okay, the group that we have is more experienced with economics.
Yeah, I thought you were gonna say stock market or something. Yeah. All right. So yeah, you can see here, I mean, people can still go ahead to submit answers, but really there are a lot of skills that you learn from your degree and your coursework. And so, I mean, looks like the most popular one is speaking. So that is a soft skill that you can literally use in any job. But also the more economic specific ones. So like human behavior and like ceilings, elasticity, revenues, those are skills that can also help you in the job search. And so I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing that screen and go back to my slides. All right, and can you see those? Okay, great. But yeah, so where I'm going with this poll is talking about making the connection between your classroom experiences and your jobs of interest. And so This particular job description, it is real. I got it from GE Appliances. They have different summer internship programs that they let students come in and do. And so this one particularly is for the GE Appliances Summer Finance Internship. Notice that this says finance, it does not say economics. But yeah, this is real. If you want to apply, go out there and do it. It's out there. But I wanted to choose this one specifically being listed as a finance internship because that's kind of where, I mean, over here, I don't know if you all can see my cursor, but it was one of the classic ones that I saw that said business, accounting, finance, economics, or related field. And so this was kind of when I was looking for internships, a lot of what I would see, Econ was kind of listed as like that other. But once we start to look at this job description, do you all notice how some of the things that we listed are able to translate to this job? And so there's people that had talked about, so some analysis, data analytics, that skills right here in this job description. Aside from that, nobody listed this in the word cloud, but using tools like Microsoft Office and Excel. And so I know at U of L, at least, people that were doing the econ major took computer information systems courses. And so we did learn Excel from that. I assume a lot of people probably know what PowerPoint is and how to use that too. And then aside from that, 1 to 2 semesters of accounting or finance, at least at U of L, we had that. I don't know about NKU or about other schools too, but that was part of our core business coursework too. And also lastly, they want someone who's self-motivated, responsible, and disciplined. So this is something that really hitting on those soft skills, but is not something that you might learn in the classroom, but something that maybe your job from Target or from Starbucks can help you show. And so, I mean, just even kind of looking quickly at this job description, somebody that has an econ degree can easily hit these 3 or 4 bullet points. And so if you hit some of the bullet points, congrats, you qualify, apply and go for it and see what happens. And so the last step is be confident. This is one that I think a lot of people struggle with, including myself. I mean, it's easier said than done, especially in the job search. It's scary to put yourself out there. It's also scary to possibly get rejected. But my tips for being confident, I think first you have to remember your progress. And so something that helps me is to go and list out skills that I've acquired or projects that I've worked on. And doing that not only makes me feel better about kind of thinking of things that I can do now that maybe I couldn't have done a year or 2 ago, but also when it comes to interview time, for me being able to quickly recall good examples of how I've maybe demonstrated certain skill sets or like worked with other teams and be able to apply it to a job. And so next, one of the things that makes me feel most confident when I'm going in for interviews is coming prepared. So I'll say that as a former HR person myself, you can definitely tell when somebody comes into an interview prepared or not. And I mean, that just helps people stand out as a candidate, showing that they actually want the job that they're applying for. It's very obvious to a recruiter when somebody is just kind of going through and applying for anything and everything. And so in order to set yourself apart on that, do your research on the company, the specific position, and also the hiring team. So with LinkedIn and other benefits, and this is something I do every time I have an interview, but as soon as they start setting up the calendar meetings for me to go and meet with people or like send me an email about who's going to be on my panel, who I'm talking to, I look up every single person on LinkedIn or even just like on the internet sometimes and to see what I can find. And that is definitely a way that you can be able to relate to somebody and impress them. And an example of how I've done that before was somebody that was on my interview panel here at Yum. I looked him up online and I found his LinkedIn, but then I found another page where it said that he has some sort of Excel power user certification. And so in my interview, I made sure to talk about my Excel skills and how like that's how I got my first interest in data and just really being able to relate to somebody. And so that gets you an edge and makes you stand out. And it's like something that I didn't tell him that I Googled him and that I had found that, but it's kind of using those little nuggets that you might find about somebody to help you along. And then lastly, so being a clear communicator, this is another one that doesn't necessarily come natural to a lot of people. But in order to kind of get that confidence when you're going for jobs, it's good to practice your elevator pitch. So if you've not heard that term, that's something that in HR, we kind of call it a 1 to 2 minute speech about who you are, what you're interested in, what your experience is, and what you bring to the table. In addition, there are mock interviews. So I know our university does those for the students where they'll bring in career professionals and you have a one-on-one interview with them. It's not for a job necessarily. It's more just like strictly for practice. But if the person likes you, then they might keep you in mind. But yeah, that'll help you when you do go down for a real interview to be able to quickly recall things that you want to talk about. And then also part of being a clear communicator is having a friend review your resume. So I think that this one is really important as well, because I know that if it's a document that I've spent a lot of time on, I've been staring at for too long, then I start to miss things. And so you want to go through and send it to a friend or maybe a professor or colleague that you trust. I like to send it to people that are both in my field and outside of my field too. Because yeah, a lot of times like there might be a spelling error that you miss, or maybe you put your verbs in the wrong tense, or there's some formatting that one text size is bigger than another one. So it's like little things like that that can easily be overlooked, especially if it's a document that you've seen a lot before. But it's something that can definitely help you to put your best foot forward. And yeah, again, like with me sending these to both people in my field and people outside of my field, I feel like the people inside my field are able to give me more of a perspective on the work I've done, or maybe better ways to convey the work that I've done so it's understandable by a recruiter. Or they just might think of better ways to say things than me. But then someone outside of my field, this one I think is really important too, because somebody outside of your field, you have to remember that kind of the first step to getting any job is you have to get past that HR person. And at least for me, I mean, I do have previous HR experience, but it's very, very likely that that HR person is not in the technical world, never has been, doesn't really know a whole lot about data or analytics. So you have to write your resume in the sense that anybody can understand it. And so whether that's somebody that's technical or non-technical, you want to make sure that you convey the correct message. And that's where somebody that maybe isn't as technical as you can give you that background and say like, okay, I have no idea what you meant by this bullet point, or I can't get a clear idea of what you're even saying. And so, yeah, for those you want, the friends can be really helpful. And so this ends my little internship spiel, but I want to get more into my specific career journey and kind of how I had made it happen. And so right now we will start in 2015. That is when I graduated high school. So I'm not that much older than probably several of you in this crowd. But yeah, first I have already mentioned I was cashier at Subway while I was working on my economics degree and also my Spanish degree. I was a double major at U of L's College of Business here. And so 2016, you know, not a whole lot happening for me, still just kind of going to school, working at Subway. 2017, same way. I was kind of looking at internships at that point, but was still a little bit too fresh in my coursework to really be qualified for a lot of them. And so kind of kept doing my thing. And then in 2018, that's when I started at LG and KU as a human resources intern. And so for those of you in the Northern Kentucky area, LG and KU is pretty similar to Duke Energy. So it's kind of like me working there. And then I'd worked there for about 1.5 years. And once you're an intern, once you're not a student, you can no longer be an intern. And so after that, I had graduated and accepted a job as a cybersecurity analyst. So a lot of times people ask me, how did an econ major go to cybersecurity? And I'm just like, I don't know. I don't think that they would have looked at me like had I not been an internal candidate. But like from that, I would like to say that, so yeah, HR was kind of where I got my start in analytics. And when I was gearing up for graduation, I was looking at a lot of data analyst positions. So that was both internally and externally. But yeah, earlier I mentioned that over and over again, like I was missing the programming skills. And so like I applied for the cybersecurity job internally. It was an okay job. I mean, definitely cybersecurity is a great field, but as far as my interest, like it wasn't something that I saw myself staying in long term, and just wasn't what I went to school for. And so that's when, at the same time, I decided to start my master's in business analytics. And so while I was doing that, I had also moved to a different role internally as an operations analyst. So that was a lot more up my alley. So in that role, I did things with predicting our consumer behavior, maybe trying to predict what payment plans people will sign up for, if there are certain patterns among our customers. And that was a lot better fit for my skill set than cybersecurity ever would have been. And then, yes, during that, I started as my part-time statistics instructor position as well. And since then, up to 2021, where I am now, is over at Yum Brands. And so part of how I had ended up at Yum, and while I really did like my operations analyst job, I didn't see myself at LG&E for a long time. And so that's where I started to look externally for other positions, but I'll get more into that in my coming slides. But yeah, so this I think is a good display of kind of the ups and downs of my career path. And just, I mean, I feel like with me, I have been in several different analytics roles. I mean, that's fairly obvious, but all of those roles have helped me to get to where I am today, give me different perspective on different areas of the business and what they're focusing on, rather than just like me going into accounting and straight up being an accountant and never leaving that. I think being in different areas, having that different perspective is really a good point to be successful. Okay, I don't know why this slide looks like this. I don't know if it looks weird on your all's end too. I've never seen that before. But yeah, I'll go ahead and read and talk about it anyways. So yeah, when I first started my internship search, I was really disheartened quickly that it didn't seem like there was a lot of options for econ majors, at least in the Louisville area. And now with you all, especially being able to work remotely during COVID, that was something that I did not have. So I was pretty limited to the local Louisville area, but a lot of what I was seeing was things that were kind of government jobs. So they had very low pay or they weren't paid at all. And that was where I had got an idea that I needed to think a little bit more outside the box. And so I knew that I liked working with people. I started Googling careers for econ majors. Literally, I mean, that sounds dumb, but I'm sure that I'm not the only person in this crowd that has done that before. But that's when some HR stuff started showing up. And so there was one job that was out there for an international human resources manager. And so for me, with my Spanish background, I was like, oh, okay, like that would be cool, something that I like. And looking at the skills that a person would need to get in that position, it was showing a lot of benefits and compensation. And so I thought maybe HR could be a good place for my skill set. Aside from that, here at U of L, we have a healthcare economics course. And so like I had taken that and I knew that I liked the coursework and the material. So I thought that maybe in the whole benefits space, like that would be good for me also. And so come career fair time, I had gone out and applied for the job at LG&E already, but it had been a while, probably at least like 2 months, and I hadn't heard anything back from them. And so this wasn't even something, it wasn't like an automatic rejection, just like no going forward, no denial, and just kind of a ghost on the other side. And I knew they were going to be at the career fair. And so once I knew they were going to be at the career fair, that's where I was like, okay, I have to go talk to this HR person. And I'll say it is nerve-wracking to go up and talk to the HR people, even though they do that all the time. That's what their job is quite literally for, but you really must get yourself to go do that. And I would say that I'm a bit of an extroverted person, so it's easier for me to do than for people that might be a little bit more introverted. But this is really how you're going to get your recruiter's attention and get your resume moved to the top of their pile. And so whether that's a virtual career fair or in person, just making that first move can really come far for you. And so after I had spoken with her, lo and behold, I got a message that following week that said that they wanted me to come in for an interview. And so I don't think that me going and talking to her directly was any sort of coincidence. But once I came in for my interview, I came in with clear reasonings of how I thought my skill set could fit into the organization, and I was offered the job. And this little picture of me is right when I first got the job. If any of you are in Louisville, this is in front of in the Center downtown. And yeah, after I interviewed, I was offered the job pretty shortly after that as well. Okay, my next slides are looking weird like that too. Oh, well, here they are, I guess. That's interesting. All right, so I guess we'll do it like this now. I've never seen the text show up like that before. But so after that, I mentioned earlier that kind of when I was on the full-time job search after I finished my undergrad degree, I was having a little bit of trouble finding jobs. And so I'd applied for a few things internally, wasn't having a whole lot of luck. I'd applied for stuff externally, didn't hear anything back from them either. And so that was kind of the moment with me. I was like, okay, I know I wanted to wait a couple years after undergrad until I went to grad school. I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do or where I wanted to go with it, but I knew I wanted something more technical. But then when I was applying for these jobs, a lot of them were asking for skills in SQL or maybe SAS or R or Power BI. And that was just something that I didn't have from my undergrad education and didn't have from my work experience either. And so that's something that also I want to hit on, is that knowing your weaknesses as a job candidate is really where you're going to see the most growth. Being able to say that these are the skills that like I have, but also the skills that I need to work on is going to be key for you to getting the jobs that you want. Like from my econ program, we had one class that used data, and it wasn't a required course. But for me, I mean, a lot of people say that programming can be self-taught, which I think that's true to an extent. I've always been better with classroom learning. But for me, having really no solid foundation, that was where I decided that a formal education path would be better for me. But yeah, with the rest of these bullet points, just kind of talking about the decision to return to school in general. If you were thinking about pursuing a graduate degree, just really, I encourage you to think about where you see your career going and then finding a program that fits your goals. So putting a lot of thought into like where you see yourself in 5 years, which is a very generic question, but it is important to show you like, okay, where am I now and where do I want to be? Further from that, I think grad school can give you a chance to specialize your skill set and make you a more competitive job candidate. This was definitely the case for me in terms of me kind of going to grad school in a different field that I had coming from undergrad. So now I feel like I am qualified for both of those jobs. And then, yeah, lastly about programming. I mean, a lot of people say that that can be self-taught, and not just with programming, but for me specifically, that was the barrier that I had. But I think you should be realistic with yourself. If traditional classroom learning or self-teaching is going to align with your learning style. And for me, trying to teach myself programming with zero foundation and just kind of pouring over random courses on the internet, I knew just for me that that's not something that would have ever worked. My brain doesn't work like that. I need somebody to kind of go through and show me and teach me directly instead of trying to teach myself. And not everybody is like that, but yeah, I think I'm not trying to say that people have to go to grad school to be successful or to teach themselves things like that, but being aware of your own learning style will help you to see what the next best step is for you. All right, and so when I finished my internship and started working in cybersecurity, I had already alluded to earlier that constantly got the question of how the econ major ended up in cybersecurity. But I mean, that was really because as I was approaching graduation, I started having that panic of not finding a full-time job yet. And there was this position that opened up inside my company. My boss encouraged me to apply, even though I felt wildly unqualified. But it was a job and I ended up getting the role, and I was able to stay there while I was in grad school. And just kind of making the connection between HR and cybersecurity. So this specific position that I was in, it was a lot more technical than a lot of the cybersecurity roles are now. I say now, and this was like 2 years ago, so it wasn't that long ago. But this role at my company was responsible for sending out simulated phishing campaigns. So phishing emails are those emails that people send you that are very generic, and they try to get you to click on stuff and download bad things onto your machine. And then once we got the results back for who clicked on the phishing emails, we would go through and do an analysis of who clicked. Are there any patterns with who clicked? And then kind of the other half of that role was making trainings for the company. So every year, every employee in the company would have to take a cybersecurity training. Or occasionally I would have to go out to different power plants or different work sites and give formal instructor-led trainings to those employees. And so even though this was a little bit different than the experience that I had, like I had experience already from HR working with employee data, I was able to keep things confidential. Also, I was somebody that was comfortable speaking in front of people. And so speaking was our big skill that we had from earlier. And that skill really goes a long way, being able to talk to anybody and get in front of anybody as well. And so from these, I knew that my people skills coming from HR would translate into this more people-focused role of cybersecurity. And so, yeah, again, I don't like to use this job. It was kind of a Hail Mary for my career. Again, I really don't think that they would have considered me at all had I not been an internal candidate. But that being said, so I got some red text up here, but I made this connection because I knew that I worked with people in HR. I would be working with people in cybersecurity. I didn't underestimate the soft skills that I had. And then lastly, big red text here is that you need to be creating relationships during your internships, and you need to know how to leverage them, and don't be afraid to leverage them either. So my boss, when I was in HR, she was the HR person for IT. And so she knew all of these managers. I would tag along to meetings with her and get to meet other people in IT, especially people at the leadership level. And so for me, like, it was a lot easier for me to get this cybersecurity job because people knew who I was. They recognized me as somebody that put out good work, was able to form relationships with others, and they knew I had an interest in data as well. There was a data component to this role. And so I knew that I had strong connections and I leveraged them. And that really, once you do get your foot in the door with an internship, that's something that really you need to be using and can help you move on to that next step, even if it's not something that you originally saw yourself in. And another side of that is, even when I was an intern and even now, I do feel like interns kind of tend to gravitate towards each other, which, I mean, a lot of that is especially if it's people that you have classes with. You might know them from outside of work already, or you are kind of the same age, might have the same interests. But I do caution people into gravitating around other interns because, well, I always say the people you need to be friends with are like 35 and 40 years old, or like people that are your parents' age. So for me, like, that's been the best thing that I've done, is to be able to create relationships, not only kind of with my peers. I mean, that's important too, that you have friends at work, but being able to create meaningful friendships with the people that are older has been really important to my career development, because those are the people that are in those more senior roles. They're probably hiring, or if they're not hiring themselves, then maybe they know somebody who is. And so they can kind of be a point of contact for you, somebody that can be, in the corporate world, we call it your champion, where it's somebody that can go and vouch for your skills and abilities when you're not in the room. And so, yeah, for me, typically, I mean, if they're not that manager role, they probably know the person who is or have worked with them for a long time, and having somebody to be able to vouch for you is going to be critical in making that next move. And that's not something that somebody else that's an intern will always be able to do. All right. And so after that, I had went from cybersecurity to operations. And so this was during the time when I was going to grad school full time on top of working full time as well. But so I would say that I finished my master's in August, and not this past August, but the one before. And when I was coming up on graduation, I was starting to get pretty upset that I felt like I still didn't have a career in data. And I mean, while the cybersecurity role was a strong role to start at the company, it wasn't what I wanted to do long term. There was a little bit of a metrics component, but it wasn't a whole lot, to be honest. And I just didn't feel like I was using the skills that I was getting a master's degree in, and I wouldn't have the opportunities to do that either. And so I started looking internally and externally for new roles, and one of our HR people had put me on to this operations analyst role. And so from this, before the job was even posted, she had said that it was going to be posted within a month or two. I went out and I found the guy that would be my manager on LinkedIn, kind of planted the Easter egg in his head of like who I am, interacting with his post so he remembers me when my name comes back up. But yeah, so that was kind of my first interactions with him, and him getting to see me before the job was even posted or before I applied. After that, I had another friend internally that is 43 years old, and he's still one of my close friends that worked for this manager previously and was able to put me in contact with him and give me a formal referral. And so that for me was, I don't know, definitely one of the strongest points that I had coming in was I had somebody that was my champion, knew about my experience, knew about my interest in data, and had quite literally worked for this manager before and was able to tell me how he was as a manager, but also be able to give me that referral and talk about how I would be a good fit for the job. And so, yeah, I would say that this role was a lot better fit for me and just my skill set. And I was able to apply my skills that I got from my master's degree, which is what everybody wants to do, I would say, with any education that you get. In this role, I had done things like text analytics and stats modeling and also studying consumer behavior. So it was a natural transition for somebody, again, that had studied people analytics in the past like I had. And so my big point on this slide is please use those connections to land the job that you want. Don't be afraid to feel like you're asking anybody for anything or you're bothering them. A lot of times, especially when it comes to people mentoring younger students, they want you to succeed and they want to lend that helping hand, and still here be able to link your previous experiences with your future opportunities. All right, and so now from operations to data analyst. So yeah, I have not been at Yum for very long. I just started in March, so I was a COVID hire and a COVID on board. So that has been interesting, but I do want to say that when I first applied with Yum Brands, I actually applied for a data scientist job at KFC United States. I did not get the role. Unfortunately, it did come down between me and another candidate, and they had ended up hiring him over me. But from that interview process, I mean, I got it all the way to the top two. So obviously they had liked me, and somebody in that panel thought that I was talented. And so someone on my panel, the same guy that I had called out about being an Excel power user, he referred me over to this open position. And so this role here, it's similar to what I was doing at LG&E, but just at a different company. I mean, it's a company that has a global workforce and a lot of opportunity. And I just thought it was a better fit for me and where I see myself long-term and a lot more opportunity. And so I made the switch, even though it was to a role that was pretty similar to what I was already doing. And so here, it's still not exactly where I want to be. Here's a little pic of me and Colonel Sanders, so cute. Oh, the one of 2 times I've been in the office in the past like 7 months. But yeah, with this slide, like, so here, yeah, this role, it's not exactly where I want to be. I mean, I'll be honest about that just because it is similar to what I was doing before. It's not that data scientist role, but sometimes you do have to leave your current company to get the opportunities that you want. And a lot of the moves that I've made before have been internal and they worked out for me. But kind of being self-aware and knowing where you want to go, and if you're able to get there in your current company, you might need to move. And it's okay to take a job just to get your foot in the door, even if it's a stepping stone instead of your end goal. That's kind of what I did here and what I'm doing now. But still, I think it's good to go through. And now that I'm an internal candidate, I can go ahead, I can make connections here the same way that I had done at LG&E, and then position myself to be ready to take that next opportunity that comes up. And so here, I know I haven't stopped for questions. I kind of forgot about that. But if anybody has questions up until this point, I can go ahead and take some.
Kendall, I don't see any questions in the chat, but I do have a question about the advice of changing jobs. Is there any stigma in the market these days on the frequency of changing job titles? And what is your advice on how to handle that stigma if it does exist?
Yeah, I mean, with that, I think it does depend on the recruiter. I mean, I've heard recruiters, and even one of my previous bosses, we were looking at candidates for another role, and he was throwing people out because they had too many job changes. And I was like, somebody could have said that same thing about me. So I did call him out on it, but I don't know. I think it is kind of generational too. Is there's some people that do think that like the longer you stay at a company, the more dedicated it makes you look, and things like that. But I'm not really in that mindset. I think that as long as somebody comes in, say they do have a couple different job switches, you have to create the story around why you switched. And so that is what, I mean, I experienced that too. Somebody could say that I've kind of job hopped within the past couple of years, but every pivot that I made was logical. So when I left HR, that was because I was graduating. I couldn't stay there, even though I wanted to. When I left cybersecurity, it wasn't when I got my master's in. So, and then when I left my previous company too, like I just didn't have a lot of growth there. I mean, we were a utility industry, so it's a small company. It's something that's only going to be in Kentucky, where I want to work abroad or maybe outside of Kentucky. And so I think it's about how you sell it with that. And I don't know, if you kind of come in and like seem like you're aimlessly job hopping, then that's where people can get into trouble. But for me, and what I've seen other candidates do, is being able to have a logical train of thought as to why you switched or made pivots or something didn't work out for you. Like one time we had someone come in that they were in a job for 6 months and they said that their department got eliminated and they got laid off. So that's something, I mean, especially during COVID, that is relevant for a lot of people. So yeah, being able to tell your story and show how those experiences are getting you to this next point where you want to be is critical.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for that. And technically, we have 6 more minutes left in the presentation. I know some people have to run to classes. So if you don't feel obligated to hang around, thank you for being here. But if you do have a question, please go ahead and ask your question at this point.
Okay.
You all.
Yeah, I do have a few more slides. So I could go through those. Go ahead. Don't have questions either.
Go ahead.
All right. So yeah, this one, I think these are the most important. The last slides are just a couple examples of stuff we're doing at Yum. But a lot of people will say, what can I do right now to prepare me for a career in data? So if anything, this is my takeaway slide for you all. Number one, learn and practice statistics. I love statistics, so I might be a little biased on that. But during my undergrad career, in red letters here, the thing that I would say mostly encouraged me to pursue this career path was taking econometrics. At U of L, at least when I went, this wasn't something that was required, but that was what prepared me for grad school and let me apply the stats that I had learned in my business statistics course to economics problems. A lot of people, to learn and practice stats, you might major or minor in stats or math. You can go out there, find a practice data set online, or maybe something that you've used in your coursework and create a valid work sample for some hands-on experience, and also maybe consider graduate education. And then the second part of this is learning how to code. So this was not something that I had done in undergrad that I would like to change if I had the opportunity to go and do it back again. But I would say number one, learn Excel. Even if it's not required in your coursework, this is something that I see is pretty much required on every internship. And so, yeah, luckily at U of L, I was required to take that course where I got exposure to it, but that's kind of, at least of the jobs I was looking at, seems like kind of the bare minimum in the business world to be able to get your foot in the door. Also, a lot of people I've seen will either double major or minor in computer science. This was something that I considered, but it was a little bit too late in my studies to be able to take it on. And so I was not able to do that, but had led me to believe that I wanted to go on and do something more technical for grad school. So if you have the time to do that in your studies, then that's good. Next bullet point, a shout out to the Econ games, but participating in events like this. So I think here, like, find a practice data set, learn about the career field, and level up your skill set in addition to classroom studies. So this, doing things like the Econ games shows your initiative in the field, gives you things to talk about in your interviews, and then also you can add them to a GitHub, which a GitHub is kind of a programmer's portfolio. And lastly, so there's a lot of online training programming resources that are out there. It can be kind of overwhelming if you're starting from nothing or you don't really know what you want to do. But a lot of times these can be found for free if you're somebody that likes to do self-education. And then lastly, again, consider grad school. All right. And so this is where I'm going to kind of step away from talking about my career and show you some things that we do here at Yum. So this is a what do I do all day section. First, some of the work that I do is outlier detection. And my position now, I'm kind of a business intelligence person for our internal audit group. So with me, I'm not an auditor, not an accountant by any shape or form, but I still work for them and help them to do their jobs better. And so one thing that we do with our stores around the world is we want to see who is failing their food safety audits, but more importantly, why. And so this chart to the right, it's a little excerpt of the type of work that we do. But if you look at this consecutive fails column, we have a company policy that says that if a store fails their audit more than 3 times, then we can go in and shut them down. And so there's stores that fail in 10 and 15 times that I don't know how they're still open, but they are. But so for that, we want to make sure that here, it's only about 1% of our stores around the whole globe are failing more than 3 times, which is good for us. But these are outliers and they're very uncommon for the business. So as a company, like, we do want to take a look at these stores, and I blurred them out just for our own privacy, but we want to see why they're failing over and over again. Are there certain indicators that are determining if a store is likely to fail an audit? So maybe are there some auditors that are scoring more harshly than others? Are stores in hot climates, so it's difficult for them to maintain temperature requirements? Are there pest problems? So those are things that we're looking at, and we could do a model like a logistic regression or a decision tree to further investigate this. And so next, some of the work that I do is random sampling. So at Yum, we have about 50,000 stores globally, and that is over 150 countries. So with my team, and when I say my team, I mean the auditors, before COVID, they will go around the world and fly to various stores and our sites and go in and perform these audits. And with COVID, I mean, this has gotten obviously a lot lesser and people haven't really been traveling as much, but yeah, we have 50,000 stores. So do we really need to be going out to all of them to be able to have the same statistical validity that we might get if we go to 5,000 stores? No. So with our business, we do have limited time and limited resources. So we need to be able to focus our efforts and while still getting a picture of what our global landscape actually looks like. So I think that now, especially with COVID, us being strategic about the restaurants that we're sampling is even more important than it was before, because we have those travel restrictions, especially when we're talking about going abroad. Because we kind of threw a wrench in everything that we were doing. So we still want to make sure that we're sampling enough stores to get an accurate representation of our business, but we're not sampling so few that our results are really biased. And so another project that I worked on is text analytics, also known as natural language processing. So with things like social media, customer feedback surveys, it's really critical that we listen to the voices of our customers, especially in the industry of food and beverages that we're in. I typically will send out things like, I mean, you've seen on the bottom of the receipt, you can take a survey, get a free chicken sandwich, get a free taco, things of that nature. But we do actually look at those, and we want to get feedback from our customers and extract insights to what we're doing good, but also what we could do better. And this screenshot on the right-hand side is from kind of I call it a passion project that I had done relating to tweets about the iPhone. So it's not something that we do internally at Yum, but it is a publicly available data set that is a good example of stuff that we do actually do here. And yeah, something that could easily be applied to one of our products. And I would say this is my favorite subfield of data science, especially with me having a background in learning a second language. It's something that comes easier to me, and that's really enjoyable. So I do encourage anybody that's multilingual to check this out. But yeah, this is something that at Yum we're really starting to look more at, is our social media interactions with the consumers. And so here's a list of some other ways that I've seen data science being used at Yum. And so, yeah, not all of these are stuff that comes from my department, but I've been talking with other analysts that do this work too, and also some that do have econ backgrounds. So we do a lot of work on unit economics. So it's pricing our products, seeing if stores are profitable with currency conversions. This is pretty big with us being so global. There's people that work in operations analytics, human capital analytics, compliance. So that's one that's a little less quantitative, but I know quite a few econ students that did go the law school route. And so if compliance is something that you're interested in, then we do that here too. And then aside from that, we do demand planning, marketing analytics, business intelligence, and more. So here on the slide, I'll kind of go through these quickly. I know we're like running out of time, but I mean, a data scientist makes on average about $117,000 a year. Going to change with your location and your experience, but about 91% of them have a master's degree or a PhD. Not saying that it's absolutely required, but it's kind of expected and definitely a good thing to have. And a lot of data scientists I've seen can come from computer science, engineering, math, econ, and statistics. And then, so this last one, very important, only 18% of data scientists in the US are women, and there's 11% of these teams that have 0 women at all. And so that's definitely something that I have time and time again been the only woman in the room. Would love to see that being changed. Especially when you look at what percentage of US data scientists are people of color. The disparities are very, very low. And we desperately need to change this as well. And I think that this slide, we need people in this field with diverse perspectives, and you do bring perspective and talent to the field and will bring forward the equity of data science. So we need just and fair algorithms, and leaving out key pieces of our population is just a recipe for disaster. And so if you take away anything from this presentation, I would say that we do need more diversity in this field, but at the same time, going back to the slide earlier about what you can do now to get you into this field, I hope those are the takeaway points. And so, yeah, lastly, if there's any questions, I can go ahead and take those now. I do have my contact information here on the screen. So if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, or maybe look at some of the work that I've done on my GitHub, it's very bare, my GitHub. So if you go out there there's not a whole lot, but you can just get a peek into what I'm currently trying to build that out myself. But yeah, please connect with me, send me a message. If you're interested in anything at Yum, please let me know that as well.
Kendall, thank you so much for being here, for being part of the Econ Game Speaker Series. I learned a lot, and you reiterated some of my students in the audience will recognize some of the comments about networking, building your brand, telling your story. So thank you for making that part of your presentation as well, and for encouraging people to think beyond the typical econ jobs. Sharing all your experiences is a valuable. You're creating a path for the future generation. So thank you for doing that.
Thanks. I appreciate it. But yeah, I get it. It's important though.
It is. And since people are still hanging out, we appreciate you all hanging out beyond the 1 hour mark, but that to me indicates that you are extremely interested. Not to say that the other people were not, but if you have any questions, please do take the time to ask Kendall or chime in with any feedback that you might have.
Yeah, well, it's been great getting to talk to you all today, and I definitely want to make myself accessible. So if there's any questions that you might not want to put in the chat, or since we are running out of time, you can send me a direct message on LinkedIn and I'll get back to you.
Perfect. Thank you, Kendall. Dr. Fernandez says, bravo. As a professor at the University of Louisville, I'm sure he's proud of your success. On his behalf, I will say we're all proud of the work that you're doing. So thank you all. Thank you all for being here. We appreciate your time. The recording of this video, we'll edit it down a little bit and then we'll upload it onto my YouTube channel. If you did not see the last speaker series and you want access to that, it is on my YouTube channel. That was about the RA positions at the Federal Reserve Bank of Cleveland, which are still open until the 30th of October. So if you want to learn more, make sure to check that out. Thank you all. Have a great one. See you next time.
Thank you.